Kia ora, good morning, hello, depending on where you're listening or when you're listening. Welcome along to the League in Order podcast with me, Marc Peard. I'll introduce the rest of the crew very shortly. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the first official time that Warriors fans can say, well, I guess it's not our year. After a heartbreaking loss to the Sharks, shut up, Tony Kemp, do not laugh. A heartbreaking loss to, of course, the Cronulla Sharks late on Sunday. Without further ado, let's bring in the crew. Kempy, Aysh, welcome along, and of course Lavina, looking wonderful. A new set of art in the background, which is great.
I'm just spewing that the breakfast show that you did on Radio Sport doesn't get to play the predictions at the beginning of the year, mate. Because I would have kicked yours and Nate's ass, mate, in that one.
What did you say? What did you say at the start?
They finished ninth.
Oh, you did too? Well, they're not going to finish ninth, are they? They're going to finish 11th or 10th. It doesn't matter anymore because my take on the game... actually, let's hear everyone's take on the game and then I'll go on for where I want to talk about with the Warriors boys going forward. Lavina, your thoughts? How did it make you feel? Use this time to purge all those things that you've been sitting there thinking about.
It wasn't my favourite game of the round, to be fair. I thought the rugby league was pretty average. I didn't think it was that spectacular. I thought the Cronulla Sharks looked fat. Am I allowed to say that?
And slow, yes.
They look fat and sloppy and a bit overweight. And even I thought Sean Johnson didn't have that quick step. I mean, I know his defence is outstanding, actually. His defence is really, really good. But I thought Harris Tavita was holding his end up in terms of that halves, opposition. I thought Cody went a bit anonymous for too long in the game, which was frustrating me throughout the match. And I thought that the Warriors really could have beaten that side. I really believe that. That was not a great Sharkies outfit. And the Warriors had an opportunity running out at halftime that they had to have that same attitude. And I don't think that they did. And you can't blame the refs this week, and you can't blame the fact that players have gone home or the fact that they're playing in Australia. But they didn't put in their best performance, and the quality of rugby league in general wasn't the prettiest thing for me to watch. They had a chance to win it, and I really, really was hoping that they would just to make sure that their season would remain alive. But I think even though, and Kempy mentioned it before you started recording, even though they're not going to be in that top 8 for throughout the year, they've certainly picked up a number of fans along the way. And it's not the condescending fans. It's not the ones that, oh, good on you for coming over here. It's people that recognise the fact they're away from home, they're away from their whānau, they lose several key players through to injury and players returning to home. And they can still put in a performance where they come a couple of points close to the Roosters, where they defeat top 8 teams and had a chance to get into that top 8. So it was one of those moments where I was really sad that the Warriors didn't win. They didn't play good enough to win. And now that the season's just about over for them, I can't help but think back to when we first discussed things at the start of the year on League and Order, and Stephen Kearney was gone. And I remember saying, what a bad move, what a poor move. It's not going to do the Warriors any favours throughout the year whatsoever. And then Todd Payten comes in, and he was not my first choice to remain as coach. And then as the season progressed, I'm like, let's go, Toddy. You're the man. This is it. It's going to happen, not this year, but next year. And now I'm even more deflated because I know that he's gone as well. That's
so, Lavina, basically you're saying it was a shit game of rugby league to watch and you're disappointed.
And the Sharks are fat, yeah.
The Sharks are fat. Aysh, what did you take out of it?
Mate, I rode the wave. Jeez, I was so disappointed, then I was so happy, and then when that run from Talakai, he was enormous for the Sharks, but when he did that run and knocked Ped out, and then he came across field and Jazz shoulder charged him. I love Jazz's aggression. We spoke about it, but Kempe, you hit on it last week. If he doesn't do that shoulder charge, it's the 4th tackle. There's 7 minutes to go. We get the ball back, a tackle later. And, it's just like one little thing can change the whole season. And that wave came all down on me. And, it was a tough night after that. But, mate, we've seen it all year. They've been tough. They were tough in that game. They hung around. You put a nail in the head, Lavina. They just didn't play good enough. And they still should have won. So what's that say moving forward? We do have a good enough team to compete with teams in the top 8, but we just need to get rid of those silly errors like you put last week, Tony. Like the simple penalties. Like there was a hand on the face. Like I know it's a shit penalty, but it's going to be a penalty.
For me, obviously I let the game get away on them too early and had to fight back. Didn't start well and showed that resilience that we know about to get back in the game at 12-all to go to 14-12 with 7 minutes to go. I thought, I was riding them home too, mate. I'm going, geez, for me, when I was watching, I was going, you just don't understand finals footy. You know, you're playing against the sides in the top 8 that are. You look at Sydney C on Friday night. You know, they're getting ready for the finals, the run home into the finals. You know, they're just getting better and better. And Todd Payton comes out on the Saturday and talks about, you know, here's our finals. It's come early. We've got to play and win this game. And that decision by Jazz, you know, like I'm like you. I love the aggression. I think you know that's his game, but not dumb aggression. You know what I mean? That was a turning point. That they went from that momentum swing and just didn't recover, and they scored 2 late tries to win the game. And a disappointing too, you know, Rudolph waltzing through the middle to score that try to take him in front. I was really disappointed with that, especially around the defensive work that Todd had put into the side. And you know, I don't think Rudolph's way up there like everyone's making out there. They've missed out on a top prop. You know, he's average as far as I'm concerned, but he showed up some average defence in a final setting. I just don't think they're ready. So something to work on. I think you've got to, you know, you tip your hat to them for the year they've had under all the trials and tribulations of players leaving and coaches being sacked and having to live away from home. And, you know, everyone in New Zealand, I said that on radio this week, you know, like, everyone in New Zealand, whether you're a Warriors fan or not, have to tip their hat to them. You've got to. There's no other way to look at it. They've done a fantastic job given the circumstances. The question is, can Nathan Brown carry the momentum into next year? And it's all going to come down to planning, Mark. You know, you got to think about it logically. They got hit with COVID and a delayed season, and we had to hit the ground 4 weeks into it with the loss of a coach. You know, everything was stacked against them. You got to say now they've got some planning in place to actually hit the ground running next year. So hopefully Brownie, their acquisition of three players. I don't know whether Kane Evans is going to stick up to the hype as well, but you know, 3 new players. Whether or not he can carry it on, we'll have to wait and see.
The thing is, with the planning, we don't know where we're going to be next year. So I think they're going to get everyone back maybe for pre-season, and I don't even know when pre-season will start. It could start in January from what I'm hearing. So I think they have a date in late November to start, but if the RLPA and that step in and say, look, it's been a long season, no one come back till January.
I think what they'll do is they'll split the Aussies and the Kiwis, and they'll have 2 training camps. They'll have one here pre-season before Christmas and one in Australia, and then the Kiwi boys will fly to Aussie with their families and present themselves post-Christmas to prepare for the season kickoff, because it's going to happen in Aussie again next year. They ain't coming to New Zealand. So let's put that one to bed. I just think the mechanic of it, like Nathan Brown ain't going to come and spend 2 weeks over here in isolation, mate, you know what I mean? When the season's over. I just think they'll have a setup where they'll have a New Zealand contingent training, an Aussie contingent training, and then the New Zealand boys will go and join them in the new year.
I think that's what they've got at the moment set up, but from what I'm hearing around is I think they might try and get everyone back for... It will all depend on the RLPA and when they decide to start. So for us, I think it'd be beneficial to have everyone here because you get more learning under Nathan Brown. You get a team unity, you know, through a pre-season. You build stuff together. So I'd like to see everyone back here, but obviously we don't know whether it can work. But on your point, Lavina, about Chanel, mate, we were raving about Cody the other week, but the way this kid stepped up, it's like Greeny, and he's not the same player as Cody. He can direct the team around the field. He can be that first receiver. He could be that general. And I think with Greeny going, these last 6 weeks or so have really showed that we have a kid that's developed in this country that can take this team forward. And I think it's a real shining light on the season. Got a
left foot, got a decent ability to front up in defence is what I like about him. But the biggest, what everyone can't see is the biggest part and asset that he's got is his body, mate. He hasn't even started to grow into that yet. So he's going to be 100+ kilos, I reckon, in 3 to 4 years' time, with a decent bit of speed and a left foot.
100 kgs,
mate. He's going to be a decent sized standoff when he gets
really. How old is he?
This 2021, but 21 this year he actually trimmed down weight because last year he was big, but getting too big, like leaning towards a back row size.
What's his genetic makeup? Because I know that their agents have a real good predictor as to what how big they will actually end up getting these players. Like if it's Tongan, you can typically say that Tongan boys will develop a lot sooner than say Samoans, and then Māoris are a bit later, and then Europeans come in with a late wash. So depending on what his genetic makeup is, will determine surely how big he actually gets.
Yeah, well, you look at him at this age, and you just know that he's got a lot of growth to go.
Yeah.
You're going to look back on it in 4 or 5 years' time and go, geez, who was that skinny kid playing standoff for the Warriors?
Yeah.
He's got size. He's got height too, which in and around halves is going to be. I actually think the back line is becoming a position of back rowers, edge back rowers, right across the board. And I think that in the future, the little man, because of the speed of the game, if you've got height, speed, it's like the NFL, mate. You got height, speed, strength. You're going to be picked over a little man.
Totally.
The Warriors have to hang on to him as well because the kid can kick a goal. Peter Sterling always said, you're not going to win a premiership unless you've got a goal kicker. There's some teams out there that don't have high percentage kickers at the moment. You've got to go 85 plus. He can kick a goal. He can control the game. He seems to have his head screwed on pretty good. Didn't get
He's
caught
tough.
up in
He's tough. He's tough too. Like at 21, he doesn't mind putting his body in those collision spaces. And I like that. You don't see a hell of a lot of that happening.
Not from the halves.
Not from a halfback. That's exactly right.
I mean, we look at what's happened for this Warriors season, and I'm calling it now. It's like I wrote in our messenger, like, I don't want the boys to have to play the last 2 rounds. Like, there's no reason for it. Like the NBA, and I'm not being a loser, like, fuck you guys, we lost, we're out of here. Man, you guys do whatever you want. I'm not thinking from that standpoint. Like, they have sacrificed enough. And like the NBA when they did their bubble, once those teams could no longer qualify, they didn't even get invited to the bubble. Now that we know that we cannot make the 8, and the other teams can't make the 8 either, like the 8 is set in stone. There's no reason to have these when I say minnows, that's not the right word, but the teams that can't qualify, like they don't, especially the Warriors, they shouldn't be over there for any longer. Like, don't put them up against the Raiders.
You're a numpty, mate.
No, I mean, it is what it is.
No,
the 8's
the eight's set, but it hasn't been set.
Well, who gives a shit where the standings are now as the Warriors?
Canberra want to finish as high as they can. They're playing the Warriors on the.
That's not the Warriors' duty.
It is.
They've done everything they needed to do.
Everyone will be shitting their pants coming up against the Warriors in the next 2 games.
Okay,
Why?
Think about this. If you're a young kid over there who's been over there the whole year, Tom Ali, Rocco Berry, players like that, you've never played first grade. You might never play first grade. This would be a perfect opportunity to see what they've got against the Canberra Raiders side, against Manly. Who are they playing? Manly last. Like, why not give these young kids a go at first grade and just...
Because it's going to be on national television from a team that's been over there for so long with a very solid Warriors fan base who don't want to see these young kids getting smoked.
They might never play again,
The
mate.
Raiders have got a shitload to play for. So why put our boys up against that when it's not necessary? They've been over there for so long.
How do you know what these kids are made of?
I think you've got a really valid point, Blake. And you want to see them fight. You want to see some young kids come through and whether or not they can step up to this level. There's a definite step up in the level. But I reckon the best part of the season is leading into the finals because everyone is playing and jockeying for that run home.
We're not.
Mate,
we can upset it, though.
Let it go, mate. Let it go.
We can upset that formation.
Yeah, you've got 1 and 2 that are basically set. You know what I mean? But there are teams that can jump into that 3 and 4. Mate, do you think that Melbourne seriously want to play Sydney City first up?
Definitely not. But I don't care who Melbourne wants to play
Lavina's
first up.
Lavina's Para will be
Can Penrith maintain it? Melbourne can knock them off top perch if they lose their last 2 and win their last 2. You know what I mean? There's so much action to happen in the last 2 weeks. I think the Warriors play a big part in that.
I think that's a romantic storyline for the NRL fan and all. But for a Warriors fan, you're like, get the lads home. Man, they've done enough. Put out whatever team you want. But I don't know. They've sacrificed so much. And maybe it is me just being sulky now that we're not able to make the 8. I'm like, fuck you guys, we're going home. But I think shining lights, clearly. Chanel Harris-Tavita was definitely a shining light of the season we found. Any of the players who were ring-ins that we think we should be, really interested in particular?
Not Jennings.
Not Jennings?
I don't want Jennings.
Not fan of Jennings?
Mate, I think the guys, this is weird. I don't know whether we had the conversation when I was talking about living in Australia and how easy it is to get loan players.
Yeah, totally.
As opposed to living in New Zealand and trying to attract some decent players to come over here and play. It's about the environment. They obviously don't have to go too far away from their home. They come in and I'm really surprised at how well Murchison, Alvaro and Jennings have actually stepped up for the Warriors. So, being based in Australia definitely has its benefits. Whether or not they're going to win you a final, you're adding Masala next year. You're adding Kane Evans, to that middle pack. Does it bring you into the finals contention, mate? It's. I don't think it's those guys that are going to take you to the finals. I think it's guys like Katoa. You know what I mean? Like, how does he handle another off season? Like, where does his body go to? Where does his mental space go to? Does he start to think after this year, man, I carved up a few of these guys on the left edge. I'm going to take it to another level next year. It's like Harris Tavita. You know what I mean? He's got to be sitting there going, man, I've had 2 cracks at this, and I'm going all right.
At 80 kgs, wait till I'm 100.
Mate, so I think they've got some real good kids in the side. And you've got to remember, too, that Kenny Mamalo and Dave Fustua came home and didn't play the last 7 rounds. So there is some depth coming back into the team, but for me, it's not the guys that bring it in. I think the exciting part is watching Tavita and Katoa and where they can go to next year.
Yeah, there's a large part of the salary cap for those 2 wingers returning as well. The highlight of the Warriors team for me throughout the year, and I think Blake will appreciate this, is the fact that it was a man that they only re-signed a couple of weeks ago, Peter Hiku, and even with that beautiful flick pass, I'm like, he's done it again. He has a cool head on him, and I think it would be great for the Warriors to invest the whole wellness thing that's going to happen and, bring us together and the team culture that they need with a new coach. A lot of it will rest on a player like him that's been around for a while, managed to secure another contract for next year, was a superstar and not expected to be so. I have high expectations for him next year. And it's not necessary to offload every time and score tries, but it's just to be there as a standing grounding point for the Warriors as they progress through, because he's been great for us this year. Much better, I reckon, than over the past 2 or 3 years.
Get a room. You guys in Hiku. Damn.
Pete's been okay, man. I think he's been pretty good this year. I think Tohu Harris has been his standout.
Oh, mate.
Oh, how good is he
week in, week out,
So how long can he be like that and operate like that for? At some stage it's gonna, it'll get the better of him, I think.
He's getting on the best. I think the
knees
best
are gone,
year's
mate.
Still in front of him. The Ewan Aiken signing, I'm like, put him out to pasture. I don't know, because you've got to think. You're talking about salary cap. Does Ewan Aiken add to the side? I try and refer it to Johnny. Well, I sort of refer to a Pākehā dude coming into a Polynesian side like Johnny Carlo that really went to another level, And you've got to look at Ewan Aiken. He's a little bit like Johnny Carlo, you know what I mean? He can actually go to that next level, and he knows Brownie, so maybe he does add something to that right-hand side. You know what I mean?
What does it take? I mean, that's an interesting take from you. But what does it take for a European skinned player to get into a Polynesian pack? Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, I was listening to Anthony Griffiths come out last week, and I lost every ounce of respect I had for him when he said there's no racism in the game. You know what I mean? I'm going, how the hell could you employ that guy? And they've just come out that week and said St. George is the racist club in the comp, and he's come out and he said that, and I just think he doesn't understand the context of if you are a Anglo-Saxon coming into a New Zealand team, is that the boys ain't coming to your level. You know what I mean? And the sooner you can get to their level, the better you're going to be.
What are these levels you speak of?
Steve Price and Kevin Campion. That's not the case.
What are the levels?
Well, Pricey had his hurdles that he had to overcome. He had just as many detractors in the team when he first came as he had players that wanted to play with him. And Campo bought into it straight away. You know what I mean? Campo he bought his little quirky way that he wants and stood up and just he loved the culture just as much as they wanted to love being alongside him, knocking out Shane Webke. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of feel like that was the moment where the boys all got behind him.
You don't change yourself.
You don't change.
Just buy into.
You just
Oh
buy
my
into
God,
it, mate.
we've absolutely got someone who's experienced right with us to talk about
exactly
that
right.
change.
Oh, mate,
Aish.
there's a lot of things different that you do in New Zealand that you don't do in Australia. It's one team for the whole country, and you get with these players and you get all the families together. I know we used to have gatherings up the top of Mount Smart, and you'd have 100, 150 people, all their family members would come. You'd have 20 people from one family come. Everyone bring a plate. Like things like you don't do these things in Australia.
Right.
And it's just buying into a culture here that you don't really get in Australia.
Yeah, I was talking to Paddy Curtis, he used to be the She's the only she's the only person that survived the Eric Watson clean out. When Eric cleaned it out in 2000, was a woman by her name was Patty Curtis. She survived the Tainui days, and she was the receptionist. I bumped into her up in St Mary's the other day, and we're talking about. She's a good bird. She was my football secretary when I was coaching. A really nice lady, Patty, and we're talking about those old days. We're talking about Ali Lautiti, about how the Warriors got rid of him, And she was saying to me, I was standing there in the reception, and the wife's outside crying, and Ali's inside crying, and all he wanted to do was play for the club, and they were kicking him out. And then what she basically was saying was it had such an impact on everybody, And I think that's when you're talking about what does it mean to come and play for the Warriors, if you ain't in it, don't come.
Yeah.
It's not about who you are. It's about this is what it's about over here, and you've got to be alongside it and enjoying it, because they do, when they go well. If you look at the Ivan Clearys and the Daniel Anderson days, when they do go well, they're all in it together.
Can we put the recent coaching as in going well? Can we put Todd Payton in there as a good days?
I think Todd's a different experience. Like in the 25 years that the Warriors have been in the competition, they haven't had to stay in Sydney for a long period of time. Everyone's asked that question. Maybe it's better if we got a leagues club in Aussie and we should go and set up over there. And so everyone brings that question up every year. Do you think we'll be better over there? Well, we're just seen with a pretty average roster and so many people that are coming in and out of the side on loan. They actually went all right. So it's a question that sort of has been answered, but it's not apples for apples, Mark. I'm talking about being in New Zealand. You know what I mean? And of course the guys, when they go over to Aussie, they haven't got the stuff that Blake's talking about, where they can go out and have a barbecue and invite 50. I remember you get get tickets and you go, hey man, we're going to have a function, but you can only bring 7.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey man, here's one ticket. It's like, we'll cap it at 7 family members, eh?
Right.
Otherwise, it just gets out of hand.
Is it someone like Aish? What would the coaching or the management have noticed in him that says he's going to gel well? And would that same sort of thing happen when they're looking at Aiken, going, yeah, he's going to gel well with the culture?
One of the things that the clubs do is they don't talent. Everyone has talent. You know what I mean? At this level, everyone has talent. It's whether or not you've got the personality and you can adjust to the environment. So they ask, a lot of these player managers and club execs will be asking you, like, what's the kid like? What's his parents like? How does he communicate with people? Is he aggressive? What's he like with women? Has he got a girlfriend? They're working on the personality to see whether or not he fits in the culture. Look, I can tell you.
How the fuck did Aish get the pass?
I'll tell you the best people that do it are Melbourne. I've actually had conversations with Melbourne about individuals.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And what questions are they asking you?
All those questions.
So, yeah.
They don't. I remember Frankie saying, "I just want the biggest guy you got in New Zealand." Who's the biggest guy you got over there?
Yeah.
He didn't say, "I want the biggest guy that can play football, has got a right foot step and can offload on a tackle."
Is that a Sofa Solomona? Is that?
That's then they went out and they got a Sofa Solomona.
Did you ask? Did you give
no,
them the heads up on him?
They ask a lot of people. The thing with it is that it's not as easy these days as to say, man, that guy's got talent and I'm gonna pick him. If you're not going to fit into that long term plan that they have, especially, what do you think Robinson does at Sydney City? I'll tell you what he does, because they just had that player called Pangai up at Brisbane say, can you take me to Sydney City? And Robinson came in and said, mate, you don't fit in down here.
Oh. I mean, I would like to see
I bet you the other 15 clubs are going, come here.
Yeah, I'm quite sure he could fit into the Warriors. We could work it. We could make it work.
We can make him fit.
Yeah, we can make him fit. All right.
I don't think Aisha's convinced, mate.
Do we think is there anything else anyone would like to add to the Warriors season? The fact, I know they're going to play the last 2 games, so I can't go any further with let's just pack up and go home. But anything else anyone wants to add before I move on?
Yeah, I think Phil Gould is a dickhead, and he should never have said that the Warriors were only going to win 4 games, because it's not just winning games, but it's their attitude that has changed. Kemp picked it a few weeks ago, maybe 6 to 7 weeks ago. They're building momentum. I know they're not in the top 8, and it's frustrating for Warriors fans because it's like another year, but the game will return here eventually to this country where it should be. This is where it should be played, in the heart of rugby league territory. And I think that the support network is there for the Warriors, and they've earned respect. They've earned mana and respect, and they've made us all proud because, the start of the year when they lost the coach and they weren't winning games, and it was like, this is going to be a very long season for Warriors fans. So I'm proud of them. I really am. And I think there's been signs of good things to come for next year. Hopefully they'll build on it.
I'm super proud of them too. I thought they did very, very well. And proud's a good word, one word way of summing up my feelings towards the Pack. And I do wish them luck against those teams that don't actually matter anymore.
I think given the three owners, they've been through three owners recently and a number of coaches and over the decade. I think you've got to give Ortex a pass mark. Mm-hmm. Given the context of the massive challenge they had to go through by taking on full ownership and then moving aside to the Central Coast and not knowing whether or not you're going to play in the competition because you didn't know if the numbers stacked up. I think they're in a healthy position as far as what they've earned off the NRL this year to make it work next year. And I think you've got to take your hat off to them. Robbo came out and said a few things in the press early on, and I haven't heard him since. I think they've had a conversation with him and said, mate, you just stick in the boardroom, Robbo. And then you've got to look at Cameron George, he was heading down a pretty beaten path. Many other coaches and CEOs have been down, and I think he can hold his head up high this year. So there's been a lot of accolades about the way they've played on the football field, but you've got to give some of those backroom people a pat on the back too. I think they've done a lot.
Yeah, Tony. That's as much as you would like to point the finger at times. I give you great credit for being able to say, yep, the boys have done a good job as well.
So Tony, you're not having a clean out now? Not good.
Yeah, how's your clean out going?
Mate, get rid of Peter O'Sullivan. Seriously. When is that going to happen?
Oh, goodness me. Aish, anything else? Anything
Mate,
from you?
just like everyone. Kempy said it well. Lavina said it well. Proud. Mate, I was over there for a bit, and the way the boys battled on for the rest of the season, bloody hell. I knew I tapped out and came back, but they didn't get the choice. So, mate, hats off to you boys, and can't wait to see you home. No Mad Mondays, though. Unlucky.
They're already started, mate. They've got 2 weeks of it over there before they come home and change nappies.
Just bring them home. All right, this was a story that popped up in my news feed that I found very interesting. I'm sure you guys would have seen it as well. And it's all about fine-tuning the bunker. Graham Annesley? I can't even say Annalise, whatever his name is. The head of the bloody referee guys. Words after the Knights Roosters
He sent me off a couple of times too, Graham.
The ball player didn't dissolve into the thin air. You guys know what the topic he's talking about. Plays the ball, gets in the way, all of a sudden becomes a distraction. Totally terrible decision. He said a really good statement that all of a sudden the attention was like, blink. I like this. He said the words, I think if you talk about using the common term of the pub test in this, there's no way it stands up to the scrutiny as an obstruction. So, the pub test.
So have you heard the one about Robbie Williams? So Robbie Williams, they asked Robbie Williams, what was it like? Your missus having a baby, and he said it was like my favourite pub being burnt down.
Yes, have heard that.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah, don't know how it refers to this, but the pub test anyway. So basically, you run the
only
play
pub
part.
test I know.
You run the play that's just happened instead, because the bunker, he freely admits, they're getting some pretty simple decisions wrong. The pub test is usually just first sight, one look at it, and the whole pub's either boo or yeah, kind of like in the Gladiator, where they decide whether the gladiator is alive or not by putting the thumbs up or down at the end of it. There's something in this, right? There's something engaging with an entire group of people who are watching the game that can decide. Well, they can be pissed, they can be whatever they are, but they usually get it right. It's like and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And they go, we'll ask the crowd, and then the most common answer is the one that the person usually picks with. It's sourcing from the crowd. The bunker could get this done, and they could do it in a really good way where they engage the fan base as well and say, well, you help us decide. Clearly we're getting it wrong. But there is too easy, Blake, too easy to go back from the mic and say, no. There must be a way where they can do the pub test with the bunker that would get it right more often than not. Because at the moment, it feels like they're getting it more often than not wrong.
I think it's really interesting that all the decisions from the bunker at the weekend went against the Roosters, and all of a sudden Annesley is like, oh, why don't we change the bunker? It's not working. It's not right. We've been saying all year it hasn't been working. It cost the Warriors the season, the match against the Eels. There was 2 competition points sitting right there. And the bunker are not making the right decisions, and millions of dollars have been injected into a system that is failing us as rugby league fans. So whether or not it should be a pub test, I don't know, but they may as well get pissed and make a decision because they're not making them sober.
I think they are. Yeah. That's the problem. The bunker's got they're too big a beer fridge in there when the boys make. I think it's a wider question here. I think in the off season, the football committee that they got there is going to make a raft of changes to the rules, and I think the bunker's going to be one of them. I think you, mate, just get rid of the bunker. That's what common sense is, because every week they're taking up too much of the game. They're taking up too much of the game during the game, but they're also taking up too much of the media post game, and it's hurting the game. And I think the football committee is going to come in and sort that out. And I also think they'll sort out this issue and around the wrestle. Again, we saw on the weekend the crusher tackle. I don't think it was a crusher tackle on Josh Morris. I think he just the way that they fell, but it's the way that they get into those positions. I think they're going to try and tidy that up. I think we've got a raft of issues that football committee will be looking at during the off season, the pre-season.
I said many weeks ago, like you said, get rid of the bunker, and the reason is that if we've got people up there who can't tell that it's a simple try, like we can replace them with people who have played in the NRL, because we know obviously Maxwell and that haven't. So if we get people in there that understand the game and get a feeling like, okay, that's obviously not an obstruction, he's taken a dive there, things like that might fix it. But if we get rid of it, there's going to be no more, oh shit, we'll come out on Monday, oh sorry, we had to look at it 42 times but we still got it wrong. Like, why not? It's human error. Like, let the refs do their job. They get sprayed anyway for it. Like, if they make an error, then what can we say? Like, they're humans, everyone makes errors, so they're going to be on there making a mistake and get blown up as much as they would anyway, whether they refed a perfect game, because we know they all get booed at half time and full time, whether it's a perfect game. So
you can't win if you're a referee.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, let them just make a human error if they do make the error, not have someone up there look at it, like I said, 42 times and still make the wrong error.
What did we used to complain about before the bunker? Did we used to say the refs were biased?
Two referees. We complained about 2 referees.
Well, see, I like the one referee. I think the one referee.
I think the one refs definitely worked.
It's advanced the game this year.
And the 6 again. I've loved that rule.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. I think there's going to be some changes come the off season. The bunker, like, here we are talking about the bunker. Like, I'm sick of the bunker, mate.
I'm sick of the bunker too. Like, can you not just imagine a graphic of Annesley? What's his name?
Annesley, yeah.
Graham Annesley. And instead of having KFC going to the bunker, he just rises up on the big screen and he puts a big thumbs up, and the crowd all goes.
He eats the chicken leg.
Or he puts the big thumbs down, and the crowd goes.
You're right into fan experience, eh?
Oh, that's it, man. That engagement. And then the fanometer starts going. And reading.
I love where your head goes. But then you don't think about the basic things like team who has the most fans would vote. Oh yeah, it's a try, even though it's a knock on. Things
point,
like that.
Blake. That's a good point.
I do love where your head's going.
It's a very good point. In fact, a very valid point, especially when the Warriors are playing.
We
away
might actually
for the
get, because we have fans everywhere, so we might actually win a couple.
Yeah, we'd win a couple for sure. We'd definitely win in Brisbane, probably Manly,
Gold Coast.
The Gold Coast, yeah.
Okay, so let's do it. Speaking of spraying refs, Aish, I'll let you take off on this topic.
Mate, it's just annoyed me. I know you can't go and call the ref a C. You can't.
Rhymes with hunt.
Yes. Thank you, Lavina. But you just can't. But it's the same ref who's sent 2 players off already. So he sent Adam Fanua-Blake.
Yeah.
And he sent Josh Maguire off. So I watched, this is just after, and then I watched the Warriors and the Sharks game, and I counted probably about 4 or 5 times Dugan got tackled and swore at the touch judge or the referee, and it's on mic, you can hear him, and then Fafita got up and did the exact same thing. And nothing. Not even a penalty, no send-off. So why is this a common thing with this one referee, Atkins, who's done it twice? Why are all the rest of the referees not doing it? Because it happens in every game. So if they want to stamp down on this, do it for every game or do it for none. And it just sort of pissed me off that this Atkins has come out and done this. And it's twice.
I think this goes back to the conversation we had last week about your reputation in a football game with Jazz Tavaga. We're talking about aggressiveness and the work that referees do and around people. The 4 people that you've spoken about, they are under the spotlight week in, week out. Yeah, Fanua-Blake, Josh Maguire. Fafita and Dugan. So when you're going out to play and those 4 guys, the referees are going, I'm definitely going to get a mouthful for one of these blokes. If they step over the line, I'm going to penalise them. And in Josh Maguire's case, they sent him to the sin bin. That's the subject part of it. It's subjective, isn't it? You're picking on people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like it's not an issue for the players. It's an issue for the referees.
Yeah.
If it's policy, then it's a policy across the board. You know what I mean? And that's what I agree with Blake. You can't send Josh off, and you can't then let Fafita stay on.
Totally.
And I'm not condoning, and don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning saying these things to the ref. If you're going to say it, then if he does get sent off, then one rule applies for all. You just can't pick and choose.
And the thing is too, like a send-off is pretty extreme for swearing, even if it is at the referee. So can it be 6 again? Can it be...
In the context of the game, they lost the game.
10 grand. You tell a ref to fuck off and you get fined 10 grand.
Yeah.
Easy. Rugby
100%.
league players love money, don't they, Aish? They love money. Hit him with the 10 grand. Imagine Fafita. Oh, I won't be able to go out on Saturday night. 10 grand fine. Easy peasy done. You were heard, recorded, you abused me.
Well, look what it done to the
You can
coaches.
pay the rest of the game. You're
Look
fine.
at the game on the weekend. The Cowboys, we know they got beat, but the Cowboys were up 4 or 6-0 and in a pretty good position to go on with it. I know it was only 10 minutes into the game, or 20 minutes in the game, but they were looking all right against the Storm. When Maguire gets sent off, that's 2-3 quick tries.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
changed the whole game just
It
because
changed the momentum.
one referee has decided that he doesn't like what he was called. Either grow
fair.
thicker skin or I don't know.
No, look, I think you have a policy. Like, Lavina's right. They brought it in. If you wanted to abuse the referees after a game in a post match, you get fined 10. I think someone just got a $20,000
Coaches
fine.
get fined.
They get fined. You know, you do the same thing to the players.
Yeah.
Make it 50 grand.
And plus in Australia, that's a
The
term
player
of
manager can
that's
pay
a
half of it.
yeah. That's a term of love in Australia.
What do you mean they're getting $1 million? 50 grand
It
ain't
is.
going to hurt.
It is.
It is, and depending on where it's said in the sentence.
I
but
call you that a lot of times, and
you
I mean
have
it with
called
love.
me that. Yes, and that is probably, again, another great reason as to why you were brought over to the Warriors, knowing that you would blend in so well with our culture, that you're just throwing out the C word left, right and centre.
Well, we don't want to end up
Before we
like
go off
soccer.
that topic, didn't Josh Dugan have a horrible game? Isn't he coming to the end of his career? He was lazy. He was cheeky.
He drinks
gave away
vodka
tries,
cruises,
he
what do you
dropped balls. I
expect?
mean, he'd be hard pressed to find a contract next year.
Cost me
wouldn't
bloody $20. I thought he'd be an anytime try scorer, trying to get some, buy me some happiness insurance. Bastard.
Young man's game. Rugby league is a young man's game.
Talking about bets, you see Kempy's bet on the weekend?
What did you get?
Sharks -3,
I
103,000.
saw
Did he have
that.
on it?
What an arsehole placing
Mate.
that bet. I know it wasn't Kempy, but whoever placed that bet, I saw it pop up on Twitch, and I was just like, you, how dare you bet against my boys? It hurt even more, and it made me even more want the Warriors to win. So some arsehole who had that amount of money who was betting, and he's probably a lovely person who places bet, and I hope it wasn't his last money. But yeah, he'd put that money on, and I'm just like, oh, you bet against the boys, I'll get you. And then they lost. I was like, damn it twice. Speaking of great bets, no, that's a terrible segue. Boyd Courtner, you wanted to talk about Boyd and his knocks, Lavina, that had
I'm a
nothing
bit
to do with
worried
good
about
bets.
him. I'm a bit worried about the whole head knock thing in rugby league in general. But the one thing I have noticed about the Roosters, they're not hesitant to prevent players from getting back on the pitch when they have had a head knock. So I'm quite surprised after that concussion that he suffered against the Knights that he'll be playing again, because the Roosters have had a track record, like with Luke Keary when Ryan Madison was playing for them, to hold players back after they've had a head injury. And I think it's something that's really important, especially in the game after Boyd's cousin, Joel Dark, was it? That 19-year-old kid that sadly lost his life, which, you know, you don't expect that from anyone that's in a recreational activity, be it professional or not, that goes out to play and then, you know, doesn't see another day. And it just makes you very wary of what's happening within systems and policies in place. Like you talk about, Kempe, you just hope that whole, you know, head injury thing is really taken seriously by every club. And Boyd Cordner in the past, you know, he's 28 years of age now, and that's still young in rugby league years. He's got a few more years in him, but I just think the concussions are coming thicker and faster. The knee injuries are coming thicker and faster, and he's an absolute warrior. But I remember last year he was concussed and tried to get up and play the ball, and I think he played it the wrong direction, because it was inherent in his nature that I've got to toughen it, I've got to go out, I've got to go on, I've got to do it all for the club. And I just think that mindset has to change in rugby league now, especially what happened to his cousins. So you need to have a club that supports you through that. You need to make sure that there's no push to get them back into the game, no matter who they are. And just be conscious of the fact that it is a full contact sport and can be real bloody dangerous at times. And we have to take care of whether or not you're a warrior like Boyd Cordner or not. I'm worried about it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lavina. I think obviously the game's gotten a lot better from where it was in previous years about the head knock and the head knock rules. I think some teams are manipulating it, but apart from that, what the Roosters in the weekend was spot on. The only thing is, I would like to see a team in a grand final have that happen and see if they would put him back on.
That's the problem. It won't
Yeah.
happen, eh? That's
Yeah.
when it's not going to happen, and it should.
Yeah, and I'm right, and I agree with you totally. I think it's the right thing that what they did, and they'll probably sit him down for 3 or 4 weeks. They're lucky enough to have the depth to cover him, and I think it's good because they got to look after him. Man, he's been playing for 10 years at the top level for 10 years as well. He's played Origin Australia, so he's been through the walls. But I agree with you, and I think when we will see the changes, the day that it's a semi-final or a grand final, and someone gets a head knock and they're like, okay, he's not coming back on.
I think you're scratching the scab off a boil with this conversation. I think underneath the issue is a massive issue that there's already a couple of class actions going on in Sydney at the moment, trying to get off the ground around concussion. I can attest to having delayed response myself after playing 14 years as a pro, in an old age. You read about Marc Peard only a couple of days ago, famous Kiwi that has just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I met a ex-Kiwi up on the sidewalk at St Mary's only last week, told me that he was having trouble wondering why he was in a room before his mind coming back to, oh shit, I'm here to get a cup of tea or something like that, you know what I mean? So I think you're scratching the scab off it here, and the NRL have a massive issue that's going to come out in the future. What needs to be identified is a collision. Is it a collision sport or is it a game of football? And if it's one or the other, then they need to prepare accordingly for that. Because what we are seeing now, and we saw it with Steve Folkes. So Steve Folkes, rest his soul, donated his brain to science, and not even knowing that he had condition, he had CTE. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of the players, especially my era or beforehand, haven't really dealt with it. And I think the NRL, they can't sweep this issue under the table. People are sitting there just thinking, what is the next step? What happens to Boyd Cordner? If he gets a serious concussion. We've seen it with the oval ball sport game, how players now are retiring in their early 20s because they get an education around, if you continue, this is what it's going to mean to you later on. I can say back in my day, you got a couple of Panadol and told to get back out there and play. You know what I mean? It's a real grey area at the moment, and something that needs a hell of a lot more consideration around it.
It's obviously the CTE studies that came out of the NFL a couple of years back, and the court cases that they've been going through and the settlements that they've had with their former players. The difference with the NFL, from my understanding, is the repetitiveness of the helmets clashing non-stop over and over again through trainings, through games. Like, those linemen are literally, that's the first thing that happens. The helmets hit, clash, and there's those mini sub-concussions that keep on going over and over again. Like I say, trainings 5 times a week, games, it all adds up, and they've come to the conclusion that the CTE is definitely what's costing these players later on in life. The rugby league equivalent is obviously, there's a lot of head banging on the ground, there's a lot of tackling, whiplash, but is there enough evidence, and when will the evidence come out, and how can you make it safer so that players don't suffer in the long run? And is that what you mean by Kemp? Is this a collision sport or is it a game of code?
Yeah, look, I think
can you have both?
I think the science, and especially in the medical arena, there is all that knowledge there that hasn't been shared. We're talking about a transfer of knowledge here through a sport that's made a shitload of money and chose to ignore it. Only as recently as when I was coaching, you know what I mean? I remember having massive arguments with my doctor about getting players back on the pitch because it wasn't policy. And what you're finding, the science is actually there to back up. See, you can, if I took my clothes off, you could see not only a fine specimen, but you could actually see that I've been through the wars.
Well, we'll be the judge of that, Tony. Take them off.
Got scars everywhere. You know what I mean?
Take them off.
But I can't pull my brain out.
Yeah, true.
And show you my brain. You know what I mean? But there is the science now that's leading towards identifying the issues in and around mental health, so depression and anxiety, the loss of memory. Just imagine. Look. Is it a what about MND? Like motor neurone disease and all that sort of stuff. Where does that come from? Is it repetitive collision, stuff like that? So what I'm saying is, I think what you're doing is you're scratching the top of it off.
And that's the thing. Like, we don't know. We see Boyd Cordner on the weekend. We see these players on the weekend. But you got to remember, like you said, the NFL clash heads during the week. There's been a lot in the years since you've playing that a lot of the players don't have to work anymore, and they train 5-6 days a week.
That's right.
So, and for about 4 or 5 months before they actually play a game. So you're doing full contact sessions twice a week, maybe in the preseason for some teams, 3 times a week. And there's a lot of concussions that come out of that we don't even know about.
Totally. The thing, I think the one thing that I learned from doing a lot of study into this while I was doing interviews, I made a documentary on it, and then just how concussion and CTE is entering, I guess, into New Zealand sports and what we're doing about it. And one of the major things that they said is, look, there is no litmus test at the moment. No one knows whether or not you've had a concussion from falling over in the lounge. Like, they don't have a litmus test, a proper litmus test that can go, okay, you need to take the next 4 weeks off. You shouldn't have any contact. So they don't have that yet. And the other thing is everybody is affected differently. So, Aish, if you and I run into this wall and bang our heads against it, my reaction to it could be very different to your reaction. It just happens to do with your makeup. So it's so hard to be able to. What we do know is that dudes are getting knocked out and should get the fuck off the field and should be taking a lot of time off. We know that much, but it's not happening still.
And this is the test at the moment. So the test you do is you get concussion on the weekend. If you do go in the sheds, you do like a...
Yeah, what is the test?
It's like a question. They ask you a couple of questions, do the months of the year, do you know where you are, things like that. But then during the week, if you've suffered a concussion, even if you do go back on, the first day you're not doing anything, you might do a light bike. Then the next day there's a card test on the computer where you've got to use your memory, and it's about a 15-minute test on the computer about memory. Is that
hard to do even when you're not?
It is. Yes, it is. So that's what I mean. Worry. Yeah, but these are the steps. And then obviously if you have a little headache, then you start back square one, or you don't progress. So players could even be lying, and
it's subjective, because when you do the first test to get your benchmark, you do it slow.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like coaching, you get a 6 restart. Well, we're just going to coach them to get 6 restarts and feign the crusher tackle and stuff like that. I just think that, this area, we're going to talk a hell of a lot more about this in the future. It's like I said, there's class actions being developed at the moment for this very reason, in and around head collision. I just think that there needs to be a definition in rugby league. It's either a collision sport or it's a sport of rugby league. And what that does is it then sets some wheels in motion to protect, if it's a collision, the player.
It sounds like Kemp
changes the rules to make it a sport.
NFL helmets?
Just came off.
Yeah.
Just came off with a head injury at the weekend. Are you telling me that his head injury assessment was telling us the months of the year? Is that as intense?
There's a lot more that goes into it, like the score, the time, the day, I can't really. There we go. I can't even remember.
Because I guarantee that kid could have been concussed, but he's the sort of dude that would have come out regardless as soon as he started feeling better.
I think I texted you at the time.
Well, I can guarantee that's what happened.
I think I texted you at the time, and I said the Warriors are smart here, and they're using a sub because that's what coaches do. Stay down. You look at the time. Oh, yeah, that's about 25 minutes. That's a free substitution. We didn't have to sub him. So I'm not saying, maybe they did, maybe they
makes
did.
Sense.
A lot of teams do it.
It makes sense because there isn't that litmus test in place where, look, dude, this is quite significant. You need to make sure that you're taking the next 6 weeks off and blah, blah, blah. Until that framework gets done by New Zealand sports, by world sports, that there's some type of litmus test, and I've said it too many times now, I'm starting to annoy myself, that will work and make sure all athletes go on it. I know, honestly. Okay, we've got to finish up now, but just looking through the games coming up in round 19 of the NRL. Warriors Canberra is the only one worth watching.
It is.
The rest are all just top 8 teams they're not really jockeying for anything. Because you got the Knights taking on the Dragons. No one cares about that. The Knights will win that. Storm taking on the Tigers. Tigers out of the running. Storm will win that. Eagles on the Titans. who cares? Both teams are out of the 8.
Titans
Eels,
are playing good,
Broncos.
though. I like watching the Titans at the moment.
Eels, Broncos, like, give a shit. Eels are in the top 4. They'll win that easily. Cowboys, Panthers, Rabbitohs, Bulldogs. Like, it's all the top teams playing against the crap teams. And the only game I really care about is going to be us beating Nathan Rarere's Canberra Raiders.
Thank God they didn't come home then, Mark.
Oh,
Thank God they didn't come
I'll
home.
allow
It's a
them to
game
play
of the
for
round.
one more week. Just one more week, people, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Are we locking in? Are we locking in the Raiders?
Yes.
Warriors
That I reckon the Eels game as well, just because if
Broncos.
the Eels lose to the Broncos
Because
somehow,
Lavina's trying to get
mate.
off that wagon. She,
The
she's
Eels
jumping off,
no
but
attack.
you know,
They're
old Cuthbo's got her by the back of the
reminding me
jersey,
what
pulling her on, saying, "Stick with us, Lavina. We'll get there for you."
Mate, if they
They
lose this
remind me
week,
what the Warriors were like a few years ago, where they've got no second form of attack. Like Moses is great when he's on
shit.
fire,
I
but
was playing
you
that.
need to ask questions of the opposition. It's almost like the same thing over and over.
Oh, was
again.
that the year that
Right.
Aysh was the
Yeah,
head,
I
was heading our attack? Is that
Yeah.
the one you're talking
I
about?
think so, maybe strike centre.
That'll learn you for going after her team. All right, team. Thank you all. Enjoy.
Quick, I want to say thanks, Mum. Lavina, thank you. I know it's Women in League round this week. Thanks,
Yes.
Mum. Thanks, my wife. Love yous all.
Perfect.
I love
Well,
you
that
too,
goes
mate.
for that goes for
Wahine-
everyone's mums.
wahine
You know,
poa, wahine poa.
we'd like to thank the Women in League for supporting this great show.
Thank you. That
Thanks,
is
mate.
it. The great show is ending.
Said it way better than me.
Nice. Ka kite anō.